That's typically a nervous reaction where, like, if everything's like settled, people are just hanging out or having a conversation, not a problem, and all of a sudden, like, someone laughs or someone claps or gets up and moves suddenly, right? Then you have that trigger. So I'm assuming you just tapped in the collar.
Yep, there wasn't any like redirect. You just like, never mind.
And what was the number?
I think 100, 105.
Okay. So the way that works is we have stimulus, reaction, and then consequence. Okay. So for humans, before I said humans, for him, in the past or now, every time someone moves and he growls, he cannot help that. Okay, that he's not sitting there plotting, saying like if you move, I'm gonna growl at you. You know, it's just like it happens and he growls. Like he cannot, he has no control over that. That's just dog.
It's like the difference between doing that and showing his teeth. It's like where the teeth actually is something you should correct, if I remember right.
Correct. Well, anything that's something we don't want, right? So teeth would be the next level past growling, right? Like it could escalate. So what happens is when someone moves and he growls, is it creates a pattern. And it becomes a habit where he's like, every time you move, I growl, right? And the more he does that and it goes unchecked, the more it becomes a part of who he is. So for a human, if someone who doesn't smoke starts smoking, right? It starts with a cigarette at noon after lunch, and then it's like every now and then, but then it becomes like a habit, and now it's like a cigarette after lunch every day. Then it becomes, oh, I want to do this more often, right? Because of the effect of nicotine and all that stuff. So it's the same thing there. It's you're creating a habit because we keep practicing that behavior until it's then when we decide I want to break that habit. The thing about humans is we can be proactive, and we can decide to one day stop smoking that cigarette, right? But that person would still have that noon response, but then now they need something to negate it, right? So with humans, we can proactively stop ourselves. Dogs don't. Okay, he doesn't sit there one day and think like, you know what, I'm gonna stop growling at people when they move, like it's rude, you know, that kind of thing for him.
Right.
Yes, he's reactive. So humans are both proactive and reactive. You can wake up one day and decide like, I want to learn how to play guitar, and go on Google, find a guitar teacher, hire that person, and practice. That's all proactively. Okay, you're not reacting to something and going like, that makes me want to play guitar, right? It's a decision.
Tased by an electric collar too.
Exactly, to incentivize you to learn how to play guitar. So here, for him, he's only reactive. He doesn't wake up one day thinking like, you know what, I'm going to, I want to learn how to heel in position and then find a dog trainer and do that, right? Like he doesn't do that. He does that because you've taught him to do that, right? So the way this works is, so it's stimulus, reaction, consequence, right? So then he thinks, someone moved, I growled, I got attacked. And the next time someone moves, he doesn't growl. Or maybe he begins but then stops. He self-checks because he's assuming I'm gonna get a consequence. And then he learns, oh, I didn't get a consequence, but also nothing happened with that person I was gonna growl at. Does that make sense? That's how he starts to realize that he doesn't have to respond that way. Okay? But it requires you being proactive for him to deter the behavior in order for him to learn how to start self-regulating or self-regulate. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Questions on any of that?
No, it just sounds like kind of keep doing what we're doing in that case.
Correct.
Just like when he would growl or bark or show an aggression, we just got with the collar and he calmed down immediately.
Correct. So what we should start seeing is all that stuff starts to go down. Okay? So, and this all comes down to consistency. So whenever you have people come over, maybe it was a designated remote person. So that this way you're always ready. And if you can tell your guests like, hey, if you're gonna get up and like go to the bathroom or go to the kitchen or something, give us a heads up so you're already there, as opposed to getting caught because he doesn't understand what they're saying, right? He doesn't understand that he's being set up. So then, if the level we're correcting them at is appropriate, you should start noticing, like, hey, like, you know, on the 5th time that we've had people come over, like, he was way less reactive when people moved around or clapped or whatever. Now he's getting acclimated to having people be over and there being other types of energy. And then also, like, his behaviors will warrant consequence if we disagree with them, okay? So everything should always be on a decline. But it's on a decline because you're being proactive. Because people always fall to, when does the dog learn to be a good dog? Okay, it's not a thing. Your dog is being a good dog because you're doing a good job about being on him and what the rules are, okay?
Never decides to just do it under his own intuition or without any kind of reinforcement.
Right. You know, it happened to me this morning with my first client. You know, they're like, it's a chow, so the chow mix. You guys familiar with chows? So like chows are like notorious for like being one family dogs.
Okay.
At least that's what I grew up with. I've honestly, this is the first chow I've ever trained other than my own. She's a chow mix. And she's completely like, she's like a passive dog. But I grew up with with chows, you know, being taught that chows were one family dogs and anybody outside the family they did not like. Okay, and that's exactly what this chow is. So it was interesting because I'm like, I wonder if that's just like some like, you know, urban legend type stuff that people just generalize. But yeah, this dog was reactive, doesn't like people coming over, but doesn't go after them, just doesn't like to be touched. But she had asked like, when is she gonna just like not need the collar and just be a good dog? And I was like, we already covered this. That doesn't happen. So it's nothing good or bad because remember, people need cops and judges and jails and stuff, and that's why we have order in our city. So same thing for him, except that e-collar is his personal cop, so to speak. Okay. Anything else?
So since he's gonna need it going, you know, forward, when it, like if it dies, we should have to replace the whole thing?
No, so the most common thing that we come across is the battery dies.
Okay.
Okay, so you just would have to replace the battery.
Okay.
Now that does come with the warranty. Did you get it on Amazon?
I think so, yeah.
Did you get the extended warranty or no?
Probably not.
Okay, so it should come with a 1-year warranty.
Okay.
If you go on doctor.com, it'll ask you to fill out like your information. It'll ask you for your serial number, which is on the back of your remote there, which is those like 6, 7 digits or whatever. You type that in and you provide a receipt of where you purchased it from, so like a screenshot from Amazon.
Yeah.
And then you get a 1-year warranty from your purchase date, okay? If something happens within that 1-year warranty, you would just send your remote over to Dog Truck, and then they'll repair it for you and they'll send it back and they'll charge you, okay? After a year, most common thing is just as long as you're taking care of your collar, the battery dies, like your cell phone,
Yeah.
right? So the batteries, so for my collars, I've had mine for like 9 years.
Okay.
That's the only issue I've ever had is that the battery died, and it's like a $20. You can literally go on the website and you look for your model, and if you need to replace the collar battery or the remote battery, I would suggest doing both at the same time.
Okay.
It's like a $20, $30 thing, and they send you a kit, and you literally just open up your system, replace the battery, and you're good to go.
That's nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, 10 years of using that tool, most common thing is the battery dies. Unless like the owner loses the remote or like their dog chews on it because they left it out or something. You know, that's something different. But also the components are replaceable. So like if he chewed on that antenna, it's like a $10 to $15 replacement to get a new antenna. Yeah. I think same thing for the knobs and all that stuff. You might have to call Dog Truck directly. So if you lost your knob and it's like, hey, I need a knob for a Dog Truck black edition, they might say, sure, $10, and then.
Definitely like that a lot more than 300.
And then you would only have it on when you need it. If he's a great dog otherwise,
Yeah.
when no one's over, then you don't need it.
Yeah.
But if he's gonna be outside or people are gonna come over, the assumption would be he's probably gonna need it. Okay? Other questions? Other questions?
We're good.
Were we doing the suit thing today?
We're probably, because we're working on resource guarding, and he does tend to fight it. But I have his muzzle too if you need it.
Did you bring stuff like bones and stuff?
Yeah.
So we're doing research guarding. Okay, cool. So I know the suit. So let's go ahead and bring out what you brought.
Can you grab? Oh, he's not moving. You just get yourself stuck in there.
So you still have an opportunity.
What do we have to work with?
We've got chicken, we've got cheese, and we've got we got 2 cookies.
And cookies, okay.
Cookie board.
What will he like? What's his least favorite to his most favorite?
Most favorite, I would probably say chicken because he doesn't get it often. Next, probably the cheese, and last resort would be the dog cookies.
Okay, so we're gonna start with dog cookies first.
The issue I have with it is there's a couple times I've been bit, it's usually from like me having my hands near some food, and there's pretty much no warning. Like it's very quick, he'll just nip you. It's not really much of a growl beforehand.
Yes.
At least there's not always a growl beforehand.
Gotcha. So like, and then is this because of the muscle conditioning, or is it just in general?
It's always been like
Yeah.
that. He's
Like for example, one time I was giving him a treat when he was like laying down. I forgot why I was doing this, but like the treat fell like under his neck. And I was like, oh, let me help you out, buddy. And I go, yeah, I got it. He bit me.
Yeah.
also he's had a cone before, and sometimes you give him something, he'll like drop it. So it's like right in the cone, so he can't get it. If you put your hand there, he will bite.
Yeah. So in those situations, unless, like, let's say he had the cone again for whatever reason, and like a piece of biscuit fell in there, I would just let it fall out. Okay, because so we cannot make him like you having your hand near his food. Okay, I mean it's kind of like if you guys are eating, would you like someone to just put their hand near your food? Right? It's except we don't bite people. So here, stuff like that, I would just ignore it. Like let's say same thing with like giving him a biscuit, he drops it and it falls under him. Like I just back off and let him try to find it, or remove him.
And then grab it.
And then get it and then give it to him. But when you remove him, if he's got the leash on, that's easier because it's not you trying to physically grab him and move him.
Yeah.
You have something external to deter him. But the moment he sees something coming in, he's thinking you're trying to steal what he has, okay? The other option is if we've taught him how to disengage. So like let's say he drops a biscuit and it falls underneath him, and I have no leash on him, but I've taught him how to disengage. The word I use is out. What most people use is drop it. So if I would say out, that means back off from the object. So when I give that cue, that means he needs to just move out the situation. So once he's moved out the situation, I can then grab the object and offer it to him again, but because it had that cue, okay? So when we're dealing with resource guarding, people often think, or they'll take it personally, or like, hey Jesse, I bought my dog this rawhide or whatever, and he bit me when I tried to take it back. I was like, yeah. And they're like, but I gave it to him. I'm like, the dog don't understand that. For the dog, they think you're relinquishing or you're giving up the object, like finders keepers.
It's his now. Okay.
Yes. So then, except he's willing to fight you for it. Okay. So what we want to teach is, does he actually chew on any kind of like antlers or something like that?
No.
Does he have any? Doesn't really care for them?
He doesn't.
Okay. Is what we want to do is teach disengagement first, and then we're going to put a name to it. So let me go and grab, actually. And when your collar set to what number right now?
90. That's kind of our working number for heel and stuff like that.
Here. So you're gonna replace your green leash with this leash. I'll be right back.
Sounds good. Disengage. Milo, disengage.
I'm gonna get him a light up color.
A light up color.
Yeah. Come here, Dodo. He made you let him go.
Thank you, Wendy.
So this is a no hide.
Okay.
So it's not a raw hide. Raw hides are like bleached and stuff, and there's like chemicals to make them look white. This is just a regular hide. Okay.
Okay.
So we're gonna see here. Okay, we're gonna let him have it. You're gonna go and give some distance, and you're gonna just keep the leash in your hand. You're
Okay.
back away. And he drops it.
Yeah. Oh.
Let's see.
Yeah, he's never been unsure.
He's not sure. Let's try.
He's curious about it.
Yeah, let's see what he does here. Okay, we're gonna just ignore him.
Okay, you might, yeah, hopefully you follow.
Sure. On your collar, you're gonna go down to 35.
Okay.
Okay, and we're just gonna, I'm gonna explain things a bit. We're gonna ignore him, see what he does.
Okay.
So here, this is best done with something that he would have for a period of time. That's why I brought that out, okay? Because if I give him the chicken, well, one, I'm assuming if I hold it in my hand, and because from when you told me the muzzle and all that stuff, I kind of feel like he at some point guard that as well.
Yeah, so sometimes, especially when we started the muscle conditioning, I would sit there and then if I like move or like put my hand on him, he'll just like growl.
Yeah.
He'll keep eating.
It seems better now though, I can't remember him
He's
growling.
better now because
past
he's used
2
to
or 3
eating like
weeks.
that, but
Yeah.
any other situation, he will like growl. And even as a pup, whenever you would pet him when he was eating, he'll like growl, like make that roar sound.
Okay, sure. So, what we're gonna try here is because we need him to be attentive to something, but be engaged with it for a bit. Okay, so what we're gonna try here is, because we want him to back away from the object. Go to-
But I bet if I touch it though, he probably will like act aggressive. That's the thing, like he'll leave it, but if I try to grab it, like let him go, Milo, just put him on foot. See what I mean?
Yeah, I see.
But even
Here
if he's
you-
not interested, if I
He's
go
gonna guard
towards
it.
it, he'll like, wait a minute.
Okay, so let's try this. I'm going to bring Milo back this way.
Okay.
Like he wouldn't want
Back
it,
to
but
the stack right there.
the moment I have it, he'll
Yes,
want
and
it.
you become a competitor. So, give a little bit more slack.
Okay.
Yeah. So hold it there. Good. So here, you're at 35? Yep. Yep. Wait a second.
Don't come to me.
Go ahead and keep your leash where you have it. You're gonna back up some more.
Okay.
And then pull it back a little bit.
I gotta readjust it too.
There we go.
Okay.
Wait a sec. So typically I don't engage the dog like this. So right now, when I do this, what we're doing is we're creating a context. Is we're putting them into the realm of, I need to guard that object, okay? When really we don't have to. But what we need is him to be actively engaged in something and continue to be engaged with it, so that we can back him away from it, but then give it to him again. Because if I give him a piece of chicken, he eats the chicken,
It's gonna be gone,
it's
yeah.
gone. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yep, yep.
So here, go ahead and allow him to come forward. All right, hold right there. Yep. Wait a second. Good. And just anchor right there. Good. Yep. 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 Good. Yep. Yep. All right. You're at 35?
Yep.
Let's go 43.
Okay. I'm surprised he's backing off with such a low number.
Yep. Yep. Right. Okay, we're gonna wait. Whoa, right here. Okay, we're gonna pause right there. I'll explain what's going on here, okay? Because you can even look on the slide. So here, what we're teaching with the collar is how to disengage, okay? So when we deal with resource guarding, most people think we're gonna piss the dog off and then we're gonna shock them for guarding, okay? No, that's not what we do. What we wanna teach Milo is when he has an object, how to back off of it and then put a name to it, okay? So like with everything else that we've done, when we talked to recall, it was tapping, moving back, right? The heel, then we added the word later, place, we taught him, then added the word later. It's always teach the behavior and then add the name afterwards. So right here, when I had the object, and you can see him kind of stepping forward, that was him engaging. Then tap to disengage him. Okay, so we're not saying the word yet. There's going to be a word to this. But what we're teaching him is, when you feel this, you want to back away from it. Okay, so ideally, I don't put the dog in a defensive state. Okay, because we don't need to, technically speaking. But so if we use the chicken, what we have to do is keep the chicken sealed and let him try to sniff and get into it to disengage him, because it has to keep him engaged for a period of time before we back him off. Because like we mentioned earlier, if we give him the chicken, he's going to eat it within a split second. We can't back him off of that, okay? So here I brought something that, if he did like it, he could chew on it, so we could teach him while he's chewing how to disengage. So I did this exact same exercise with the puppy this past week. And the puppy was crazy for the rawhide. And anytime I gave it to him, he was like, give it to me. And then we backed him off with the remote. And it's funny because their healing level is 60, but to back him off the bone, it was only like 8.
Really?
Yeah, so it was really, really low, okay? Because you have to take into account the environment that we're in, the exercise that we're doing. Let's say he was super pissed off. Yeah, maybe we might have to be 90-100 because he's so pissed off. But that's why we're working with him when he's not as pissed off. Ideally, I wouldn't even piss him off. But I needed the engagement so that you can see how this works, okay?
You could try it's closed, so you probably would try it first.
Sure. So let's go ahead and we'll bring him out without him knocking over some chairs.
We'll do the best we can.
Yep. And then did you see how we did that, where we allowed Milo to come forward, but he's limiting the leash so that you can do what you need to do with the food?
Yeah.
And all we're doing is trying to find the lowest level that we can disengage Milo with reliably. Okay? So if we do this at too high of a number, he's not going to want anything to do with the objects or the food. That's why we go lower.
So we throw a tree down and then be like, oh, not falling for this.
Correct. Okay. Now, at some point, yes, that should be the assumption, and if we drop something, because if we have a dog that assumes when he sees something fall on the ground, it's theirs, you're more likely to see resource guarding.
Yeah.
Because he's thinking anything that falls on the ground is mine, and I'll fight you for it.
Yeah, that's kind of how it works, yeah.
Yes, okay. So what we would want to deter that behavior. Just because I drop a piece of chicken while I'm cooking doesn't mean you can have it, okay? And then if he goes, well, I saw a piece of chicken fall, but it doesn't matter to me, right? Now we've avoided a potential context of resource guarding, okay? So like if you have someone come over and they don't know Milo, maybe you forgot to introduce them, or maybe they came in while you weren't around and somebody let them in and they don't know Milo, right? They're not gonna know these things. So we're, by default, like if they accidentally dropped a piece of food and he didn't go for it.
You avoid the whole,
Yes. And this has happened to people.
thing.
So let's go ahead and bring out, we'll try the chicken or the cheese, whatever you want to use.
Okay, either one's. I think the cheese probably be hard to get into if you did.
And go ahead, before you seal it, pull out a couple of pieces, because we're going to have to give him some wings where he can eat the object to keep him interested. Otherwise, if it's completely no, I'm not going to want him to
Yeah,
do
he's
it.
not going to be interested.
Okay, so I'm going to bring Milo back over here. You'll keep your leash how you have it.
Okay.
She's going to step out the picture. Good. So here, I'm going to break up one of your cubes into a couple of pieces. And And you can give it to him from your hand, no problem. Like he'll take
Yeah.
it from you? Okay, cool. So you're gonna give him a couple of pieces. Good, so you get all those pieces. And then you're gonna take a step back and grab, and you're holding like you have it. Okay? And you're gonna come down with the cheese, right? And you see, this is what we call engagement. Okay? Tap. 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 And he walks away. Good. Then you wait a second. See how he's engaged again?
Yeah.
Let's go, you're at 43.
Yep.
Let's go 50.
Okay.
Tap. Tap. Good. Right there. Okay, now if he tries to go underneath the chair, don't allow him to. You see how he walked away there?
Yep.
Okay, so we can, it's very obvious that the 50 is what's getting them to actually move away. So when we're teaching a dog to release an object or disengage, it has to be obvious, and we typically ask for a greater distance. Okay, so like earlier you said, if I just put my foot on it, he'll come and he'll start guarding it, right? So you know that already. So at a distance, you could be 10 feet away and he will still want to come for it. So then I'll push him out 15 feet. Because at a certain point, he's going to be far enough where he's going to think, I don't care about that object anymore. Okay? Whatever that distance is,
Could be 2 miles.
we'll figure it out. Is it 2 miles? So I'll go ahead and we'll bring down the, grab your bag of cheese again. And then kind of shake it here. Okay? Come in a little bit closer to it. To him. Yeah, now take a step back. Okay, now tail.
Yeah, 50.
See how that one tap moved
Sure.
them all the way over there?
Yep, yep.
Okay.
It's clearly.
So, yes, just like with anything that we do with the collar, it should be very few taps, 1 to 3, and you see a great change in behavior. Okay, so now he's more off to the side, he's not really staring at it. Whereas earlier, he was like this with the height or whatever it was, right? So him even just looking at the object is considered engagement, okay? We want to back him off completely. So see how his attention's over here, now it's over there, now it's to me, now it's to you. Now he's looking at the ceiling, right? He's not fixated on it. As long as he's fixated, we don't want to go for the object. Is this making sense?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so the last one then. So now, what we're gonna do is start attaching a word to this. Okay, so drop it and leave it. Drop it is the dog where he has the object. Leave it is he doesn't have the object and you want him to leave it alone. Okay. That's why I like just using. I prefer this term out.
I'm not against out just because we've used drop it and leave it already. So it's like a new thing.
Sure, something different.
Yeah, might work better. I don't know.
Yeah, those two I mean like nothing.
Okay, so let's go get a couple of pieces of cheese broken up, and you're gonna only give them a couple to get them interested again. And what we're gonna do now is the same thing that we just did, except you're gonna cue the word out first, and then you're gonna follow it through with the tap.
Okay.
Okay. Now go and take a step back. Once he's eat these pieces. Okay. Okay, then you're gonna bring the bag and just get his attention. Yep, like that. Go ahead and cue the word out.
Out.
Tap. Tap. There you go. Wait a
I'm
second.
surprised that you could do that at such a low number. Because it took 90 to get them to
All the other stuff?
place,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's why whenever we teach anything new, that rule of going down low, because you don't know.
Yeah.
Okay? So, right there, you cue the word first, and then it'll followed by 2 taps, and then he's coming back to your side. He might be thinking heel or something, so we don't really praise that because I don't want him to think that. Out simply means disengage from whatever it is that's interested in you. Okay? Is this all making sense?
Yep.
Okay. So go ahead and move in towards Milo with the bag, get his attention, and then you'll walk back to engage him. Right? Good. Go ahead and cue the word.
Out.
Tap. Wait a second. Good.
I actually didn't even tap, he backed away.
Okay. Now, at this stage,
Coincidentally,
you want to always get at least 1 tap, because you want him to really, you want him to think out. It's guaranteed a tap's going to happen. Okay? Go ahead and give him a little bit more slack.
Sure.
And you're gonna get 1 piece of cheese. You're only gonna give him 1 piece. And you're gonna step back so he's out of your range. You're gonna keep that scent right there.
So don't give.
So give one little piece. Okay, now take a step back, hold right there, right? So a little bit more of a step back, good. Now cue out,
Out.
tap, tap, like that. Okay, so what we're doing is with that leash, if he did get pissed off, if he tried to lunge forward, he's limited because you have that foot gap. But he doesn't need the food to be here because he's his dog. That scent is as strong as sentence. So when I'm here, that keeps us safe. You have him on the leash and you got a greater distance. So I would not expect the dog to turn around and target you because you're too far.
Yeah.
We're keeping each other out of the contact stuff. Because it, like with the cone, right? You go right in there, it's in his space.
Yep.
That's why you become a prime target. Same thing with when it fell underneath him and you went to grab it, right? It's right in his space. So here we're getting him to leave the space so that then we can go for the object and avoid conflict entirely. Okay? So for resource guarding, we don't have to create the problem to fix the problem. Okay? So let's say he did like antlers or whatever, for example's sake. You're gonna give him a bone. You put the collar on him first. Milo, okay, he takes the bone, he walks off, and then 10 minutes later, he could be chewing the bone by the punching bag, and you could be in the kitchen and you can say, out, and tap him, and he would relinquish it. You don't have to even be next to him. Okay, that's what the e-collar allows you to do, is he's thinking, man, you're in a completely different room, but you can still bite me. You can still tap me with that collar, right? So you're conditioning him to release the object, but this has to be practiced and rehearsed. So kind of like with the recall, where I was like, it takes the longest to teach, because you have to go to the park and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Resource guarding is the same, because if we practice this too much, or if the dog doesn't really have a lot of drive for things, they will not be interested for a bit. So you might see Cheese goes down on his tier of favorite things for a little bit, because everything's fun and games until there's rules. Okay, but once he starts to realize, oh, like I can have this block of cheese, but when they say out, I have to surrender it, and it's no longer mine. That's all we're teaching him. And then if they say okay, now I can have the object again. Okay, is there anything that he plays with, like they tug or something that he's crazy for?
Not on the regular. Like he plays with toys very rarely.
He does. There's like one type of bone he will eat.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's soup bones.
Soup bones, so like the raw bones.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what you would do, because this makes proximity easier, okay? Is get a soup bone, give it to Milo, right? And whenever we give anything, okay? So, you have cheese again? So go ahead and come into the space, and just have it like this, wait a second, okay? Take one little step back, okay, you're gonna bring your hand down, tap, tap, hold right there. Okay, so here, tap. When you brought your hand down, what happened?
He like went for it.
So what's his assumption?
If
It's
it's
for me.
yeah.
Yes. Okay. Okay, now he's coming back. Let's see what happens. He's giving a bit of space. It's respectful. Okay. So when people bring out things, most dogs' assumption is mine, right? And that is incorrect. It is ours until we give them permission to then have it. So if I come out with a bone, my dogs might get excited, like, oh, look, he's got a bone, right? But they're not going to come jumping and snapping at it or barking at me for it. So if I take and I walk a bone and I walk through my home, my dogs will see it and I can put it on the counter and the bone's in my bedroom, and they might look at the bone, look at me, and then go to sleep. Because it has nothing to do with them until I give them permission. Okay? So if my mom came home when I was a kid with this big screen TV, I'm not to assume that's my TV, right? So I'm not going to get really worked up about it. I might get a little excited, oh, it's a really big TV, but it doesn't mean it's mine, right? So why am I going to get that hyped up about it? So same thing here, just because you bring a piece of cheese down by your waist doesn't mean it's his. So what we're teaching is default rules. Just because I bring out a ball that he might even play with doesn't mean he's going to get it. So we will remove the meaning behind these things. So that's one way. And then we would give permission. Okay, now you can have the cheese.
Because for him, anything, we open a cabinet and he's right there. We
Yes.
open the fridge and
He's right there.
He does try to steal food. Like this morning, he was on the counter trying to get something.
Yes. And all of that is, he's a forager. and I guess in some degree a hunter, if it's on the counter. So, yeah, all these things, right? If I see food, it's potentially mine.
Yeah.
That is not the case, okay? So what you're teaching is when we bring something out, it's not gonna be his until we give him the active cue of, okay, now you can have it. Does that make sense? Okay? Try stepping in with the cheese again. Right? And you're gonna step back. Back. Right? Good. Hold that in front of you a little bit. Tap. Wait a second, tap. Right? So here, you see your natural inclination to do this, right? Everybody does it. You always want to just hold, okay? And you're like claiming it, this is mine. And you're essentially, it's like another, if he's got, you know, the prime example, he's got something, you come in, back off, right? So you're doing the same thing here, except you're doing it to press a button, okay? Now go ahead and say Milo, okay?
Okay.
Now you can have it, okay? So the default rule is if we bring something out, it is not yours. When I say okay, now you may have it, okay? So then go ahead and here, you're gonna just bring your hand down, tap, 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 right there. Okay, that was perfect, you just brought it down. He's going, oh, another one, and you're going, nope.
Now he's hiding behind me.
Go ahead and turn so that you untangle there.
Oh yeah.
There you go. There you go. Now here, wait a second, and he's
Very persistent.
go ahead and tell him Milo, okay?
Okay.
Yep. Like that. So now you're just teaching rules, okay? So now you start having control over resources, right? Because if he tries to go to you and assume that, there's gonna be correction involved. So now he starts to think of things differently. This also helps with resource guarding, okay? Because resource guarding can be just a dog's natural instinct to guard things, because he doesn't know that you bought his food from the store and there's plenty more where it came from. He's just thinking survival, and this is my food, and if you try to take it from me, I'm gonna fight you for it, okay? So, in other cases, it can just be a dog who's not been disciplined, and they're just entitled. Okay, so it's not really resource guarding, okay? And it can be both sometimes. So it doesn't matter where it's coming from, but it's always the same general rules of you only get things when I give you permission. So let's say you brought up the cheese and you put it on your coffee table. You had it open so you can catch the scent of cheese. And he comes over and he's smelling it, you would already be set up, right? And when he gets too close to it, you go, nope, has nothing to do with you. Just because that cheese is right here on the counter does not mean it's anything to do with you, okay? So then he starts to, excuse me.
Bless you.
Excuse me. Thank you. He starts to think, well, if I catch the scent, it has nothing to do with you. Unless I hear the word, okay, Milo, and he comes running over, here you go. Does that make sense? Questions so far on
So the
this?
difference between just correcting him when he's making the assumption that something is his versus just saying out is because out would be something that he's already actively engaging in, or is this something you would get in ahead of? Like,
So,
before
let's say-
he
Let's say
gets to
give
it.
Milo the soup bowl. Okay, Milo, soup bowl. And then you randomly decided, like, spend 10 minutes, no more. He doesn't know why. You have to say out. Okay? Okay, Milo, you can have this until I tell you you're done. 20 minutes later, you come back, out. Your time is up. Okay? So it's kind of like, so my dogs won't jump on me, but if I go like this, they'll jump up, and I'll pet them, and then I say off. Because it would be unfair to invite them up, and then boom, out of nowhere, technically speaking, right? So out is when you've given him something,
Okay.
or he's already actively engaged with something. But if it's something that he should just not have, period, you would just remote. Okay, so let's say I have a dog that likes to chew socks, right? And I know for a fact I will never give that dog a sock, right? I leave socks out on the ground to bait the dog. Dog goes to chew on it, correction. No warning. Because I want the dog to assume when I try to go for a sock, there's a correction and it comes from nowhere. So the only way to avoid that correction is to what?
Just leave it alone.
Leave it alone, exactly, okay? So we have control and eliminate. So like for the reactivity, we want to eliminate reactivity. So we just correct it, right? So he thinks, well, if I don't want to get a correction, then I just don't become reactive, right? Same thing when you had guests come over and you started growling. We just correct them. Because you're teaching them, if you want to not be corrected when guests are over, don't growl, don't show teeth, don't do this, don't do that, right? Because if you say no, he can technically do it until you say no. That's the difference. So you're thinking, don't growl and don't growl again, right? But for him, he's thinking, okay, you said no, I got tapped for growling and I stopped growling. But I growled before you said no. So I can technically growl until you say no. Does that make sense? Yes. So that's how a dog brain works. For humans, we can be told, like, hey, if you run the red light, you're getting a hurry dog fine. And you just go, okay, well then I won't run the red light then, right? You can do that. He doesn't.
It's got to be immediate and every time.
Correct. And then as immediate as you can be, okay? So like, let's say he was growling for 10 seconds before the correction came in. It really doesn't matter that he growled for 10 seconds. What would matter is the level of the consequence. Okay? So yeah, he got away for 10 seconds, but if that consequence was firm and firm enough, he might just go, shit, that consequence still sucked. You know? So like if like somebody's robbing a bank, the cops don't go like, man, it's already been 20 minutes, just let them go. Like they still come in and then stop the crime, right? So it's the same thing here. So don't get too caught up on the timing. But ideally, as soon as you can catch it, the better. Otherwise, you can come in technically at any point to correct the dog. Okay. So with the resource guarding exercise, the soup bone is probably going to be your best bet. Okay. One, because it'll most likely be the most challenging thing. Two, it's something that he will engage in for a period of time, so you can come back and go out, make him disengage. He backs off. You pick up the bone, you put it back in the freezer, or you pick up the bone. Okay. You have it again, and now you can practice again. Does that make sense? So that's the hard part about resource guarding, is unless the dog had, like my pit Lexi, she loves being tug. So I taught her how to out using tug, because she was crazy for it. So it's something that we can actually disengage, practice, disengage, and engage over and over again without deterring her. Okay? For most dogs, once you incorporate e-collar, they tend to like not want anything to do with the object. So that's why we try to find like the best thing, and then intermittently apply pressure. Okay, so you could one day give him a bone tonight, and have him for 30 minutes before you come in and say out, and he releases it. Tomorrow you can do 30 minutes, and then 15 minutes in you make him release, and you offer it to him again, give him another 15 minutes, and then you make him release. Or might give him the bone and let him have it until he's disinterested, and when he walks away, when he's not looking, I put it up. Okay, so he's not always thinking, man, every time I have this object, at some point you're gonna screw with me. You know? It's the same thing with the recall stuff. Like sometimes I'll just let the dog be out wandering, and instead of calling him back, I'll use a leash to reel him in, leash him up, and then walk with him home. So it's not technically a recall. So the dog doesn't, again, think, every time I go to the park, you just call me a bunch of times. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So you're trying to balance it out, which is why resource guarding takes a long time. Because you can only drill it so much. And if you drill it too much, now he doesn't want anything to do with the soup bone. And then you gotta wait for him to relax, and then offer the soup bone, and then he takes it, and then you gotta wait a while before you can implement more disengagement exercises. Okay? Questions on any of this stuff so far?
No, all makes sense.
Is there anything else that gets his attention?
Yeah, food's the main thing. Obviously, people coming to the house.
Was squirrels one? I can't remember.
Not really.
No? Okay. So, because you can practicing out doesn't have to be with food. It can be with anything that gets his attention to a pretty good, decent level. Okay?
There's a ball with treats. He likes that. He has a ball and you just put like little treats inside.
And he rolls them around.
Yeah, and he rolls them around.
There you go. So you can do that. Put some high value stuff in there. Okay him for the ball. So now when you bring out the ball, because he's got an assumption already, right? He's got a relationship with that ball. Is you come out with it. And so when you do this exercise, you're going to have him on leash, by the way. Okay? So that you have some level of control that you can apply at a distance. Because if he's got the short leash and you come into that 6-foot range, you might trigger the tension there. Okay, so this allows you to still have some kind of limitation without requiring you to come into his personal space.
Now, will this work with bikes? Like, cause he heals, he's fine, but with the bikes, I feel like he still engages and
Okay.
reacts to bikes.
Yes.
Will this work with?
But we wouldn't use out.
Okay.
Yeah, we would just tag.
Yeah.
Correct, exactly, because
Okay.
that's something you want to eliminate.
Yeah.
Now, this is regular bicycles, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you guys happen to have a bike?
Yeah.
Will he engage with your bike or no?
Don't think so. It's mostly just people going by,
Yeah.
like when we're walking
I
out.
never tried it.
Yeah.
People? I don't know. It's just that, yeah, when they're riding bikes, they caught him off guard, and then that's when he reacts the most, I think.
When you walk with him, how often do you have to correct him for the heel?
Not super often. Yeah, I'd say like 3 or 4 times on average.
Okay. I would bump it a little bit. Is that per walk or is that like over a week?
I'd say like per walk, and it's like sometimes it would be like 0.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would bump your collar a bit because it should be mostly 0. Okay. So let's say we're at a level where you can walk with Milo and it's like 0 corrections over weeks. Okay. So we can go out on a walk and assume we're probably not going to have to correct Milo for anything, right? So let's say his obedience number is 100 and that's what got you that level of reliability. Then I know, well, the only thing I have a problem with is the bikes. And if 100 isn't enough to deter him, I can go up already at a higher level. Because you said it's when it catches him off guard. That's the hardest, okay, because it's abrupt. It's a surprise, right? So if I know that's the only thing I have to correct him for the most part, I could already be 110, 120 or whatever.
Yeah.
So that when the bike comes, I'm not trying to go from 90 to 120.
You're not
I'm
fumbling
already
with the remote while holding them. Yeah.
Yes, okay? And what you can also do is let him go where he'd be at the end of the leash lunging. So you're letting him actively do it, but he just can't get to it. So for his brain, he's thinking, I tried to get to it, I couldn't for whatever reason, he doesn't know it's the leash. And then 120 was happening. So in some cases, the dog has to technically perform the behavior and then the consequence apply when the behavior is happening. So let's say we have a dog that lunges at dogs behind the fence, right? In some cases, the heel will resolve that. In other cases, it won't. And the owner will tell me, like, Jesse, I turn and tap, turn and tap. And I could be at 100 and the dog keeps lunging at the fence. I go, okay, let the dog lunge at the fence to where they're there, but they're not completely there. Okay, so this would be the fence, the dog is here, this is the limit, kind of like what we just did right now, right? We created a buffer. So he's thinking he's almost there, and he's thinking he's doing the behavior, and then you're correcting him as he's doing the behavior. So then he thinks, well, I can lunge at the bikes, but it sucks. You know?
Don't want to do it anymore.
Yes, because so you're letting him do it. Go ahead, buddy, lunge at the bike. But this is going to happen the entire time you're lunging at the bike until you stop. So then the next time he sees that, he's like, do I really want to lunge at that bike? Because it was an unpleasant time last time. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So that's another way you can approach it. So when you let him go for the bike or the whatever, you would be at the end of your handle just holding him, and he's going to be in front of you. So we're not worried about him coming back to heel and you're not turning. You're making him, like what today, when he was engaged with the cheese, and you tapped him and he came around and he sat by your side, right, with no direction, it will look very similar to that, except at a higher level.
Okay.
Does that make sense? But yes, it's the same exact exercise, but because he hates bikes or whatever, it's at a higher level. Okay? Does that make sense? Check our time. Let's go ahead and try a couple pieces of cheese again. Good. Okay. Go ahead and give him a couple of freebies. And then we're going to try this again, where you can, once he's done with the cheese there. And we're going to try to recreate what we did earlier, where... There you go.
Yeah.
Okay? And I was gonna tell you, don't touch the cheese. But it's because you're so used to that.
Yeah, I am, yeah.
Okay?
And he's never bitten me
You just put it
seriously.
up in there like that.
So I'm less cautious than him sometimes. Like I said, he's never bitten me seriously. He's nipped at me, but he has actually drawn blood from
Okay.
my.
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna flip positions. I'm gonna have Mike come over this way, and you're gonna keep the leash.
Yep.
And you're gonna come by the bone, there you go. And then go ahead and start to fiddle with it with your foot.
Uh-oh, what is she doing?
Oh man.
Wait a second. Cue your release.
Out.
Tap. Like that. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
So it should feel that simple, okay? So just for reference sake, why didn't I have you do it?
Because he's not paying attention to me.
Because I'm
Pay
the
attention
one
to her.
that's engaging him, right?
Right, because he was standing right next to it, and Milo was over there, and I could have told him, fiddle with it to bring Milo over. Why wouldn't I do that? There's no buffer.
Like,
You're holding the leash.
Mhm.
You're attached to him. Right? So if you would have fiddled with it, I don't think it would have been a problem. I think he would have backed off, no problem. But we always take precautions
Okay.
until we're at a point where like, yeah, you know what, like because we shouldn't see it escalate him into a defensive state, but that's why we're doing all this. Is when I said fiddle with it and he was limited to here. So when you said he tapped him, if he did escalate, he's not gonna get to you. And I know you said like, well, he's not bitten me to the point of drawing the leg. Doesn't mean it can't happen.
Yeah.
Okay? So we always take these precautions. And then once you've done this 100 times or 1,000 times or whatever, and we go like, okay, I can be, you know, in the vicinity out him, and he's not going to become defensive. Because because now you're not going for it. You're making him relinquish it. So that when you go for it, it's not his anymore. So if it's not his, there's nothing to guard. That's how this theory works.
okay.
Okay? Question?
No, all good.
Question? So I think soup bones would be your best bet. Something that's gonna last a good while.
Anytime how we treat him, should we say like, okay, Milo?
Yes.
Like from now on,
Anything
every time?
positive that he would ingest or like engage with, the ball with treats in it, any cheese you would give him, his food, all those things, it would be bring it out. He should default. Like if he gives a little bit of interest, that's fine. But if he's like coming all the way up and he's trying to smell it, I would still back that off.
Okay.
Okay? Buffer is always good. And then it's, okay, Milo, here. Okay, or I toss it on the floor. There you go. Now it's yours.
Make sure you
Okay?
feed him on my own, attack him, he just attacks me and takes the food.
With the soup bones, your number might be higher. Okay? But that's why you would do the setup first. So like let's say you tell him out and you're tapping him, and you might see it speed him up. He'll start chewing it faster. Okay, that's why you need something that will last a while. And then as you're tapping, you just gradually go up until eventually he does give it up. And then once he gives it up, you can either put it away or allow him to go back to it again. And then you go, oh, 80 to get him off the soup bowl. Okay, but you start low to high. You can also create more pressure through faster taps. So I typically go tap, 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 right? But if I'm already like at 80, 90 range and I want to bump it, tap, 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 tap.
Just faster than turning it on.
Yeah, because it's like, you know, if you get this repeatedly, at some point this becomes uncomfortable,
Yeah.
right? It's the same thing for the remote collar. So if I'm tapping him slowly to allow him time to think about it, and he's speeding up and going, I'm gonna finish this before you can make me release it, you just increase the pressure through level and or frequency of the taps,
Okay.
okay? This is not gonna be an overnight exercise. It's gonna be time, but it's very simple to practice. You can build the out to a level where you don't need the collar, okay? It just takes time and repetition, okay? It's all about habit. Whenever you're gonna give Milo something that you know you're gonna want to disengage him from, always preset with the collar first. So he's just thinking, every time I get that word out, I always relinquish it. Dogs are all about consistency. So every time I call my dog, I make them come to me, they just think every time I call them, they have to come to me.
Mhm.
But the moment they learn they don't have to, now they got another option. And that's where things get a little wonky with the control. Okay? So always have them pre-set up with the tool. Put the collar on, wait 15 minutes, offer the object. If he doesn't immediately engage with it, maybe he's like, oh, he's like, the collar's on, is this a trick? And you give him the soup bone and he's just kind of sitting there and he's ignoring it for 20 minutes, you would still disengage him to move him away from the object because you saw, right? So you disengage him first, then go for it, and then you put it away. And you try again next day. Okay? Other questions?
I can imagine maybe get to the point where he doesn't want to eat for maybe a day or two, but
It may.
part
I mean,
of the
it's
course, yeah.
it really shouldn't apply to his food unless you're doing it with his food.
Because we're just, right now we're feeding him through the muzzle still.
Mhm.
So I imagine we would have to do the, okay Milo for after he backs off a little bit, or just doesn't immediately go for it.
Oh, you're talking about, oh yeah, so good point on bringing that up. Is for the muzzle conditioning, that would be the only thing we're not gonna say okay for.
Okay.
Because of the muzzle,
Yeah.
okay? Now, let's say Milo was like, I love the muzzle, and he's like going crazy for it or whatever. Now we can start putting rules. Because now he's like, yes, right?
Right now we still want to.
Correct,
Yeah,
yes, that would be
for
the
it.
exception, so I'm glad you
Okay.
brought that up. Everything else, however, would be rules-based, okay? And then once he's, I think, with muzzle, once you feel like he's fine, and because you've been working with him with the muzzle for how long now?
At least a month, yeah, maybe a month and a half.
Okay.
Feels like a bit.
Yeah, I would mark it on your calendar, another month and a half, and then you don't have to do it anymore. You should be able to just put it on. But for now, you can avoid this exercise with the muzzle. That's the exception to what you've been doing. But only apply it for like the soup bones and like cheese and like the treat ball, anything else. And then once in a month and a half, once the muzzle conditioning is done, it doesn't even matter. Okay, like applying this rule to the muzzle wouldn't help the muzzle, so that's why I would ignore it there. Does that make sense? And then in terms of his meals, you could apply this concept of his meals if you would like. That's just personal preference. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, for now we'll just focus on treat, give him treats that way.
Correct. Okay. Anything else?
Good.
Okay. You switch him to his normal leash there.